Why would any Tennessee fan not want Joey Aguilar back next season? George MacIntyre and Faizon Brandon are two big reasons, but there's more to it than that as Aguilar takes on the NCAA in court, and we're here to talk about all of it. Welcome to the Volunteer State. I'm Tennessee beat writer Adam Sparks, along with John Adams of the Knoxville News Sentinel. On this episode, we're going to break down the two camps, maybe more than two, but primarily the two camps in the UT fan base over Aguilar's potential return. Some want him back for the 2026 season. I would say that's still the majority. But some are grateful for how he played for the Vols last season, but they're sort of ready to move on for various reasons. They're ready to move on to their next quarterback, MacIntyre or Brandon, and they're right there ready to go. John, before we get to that, and there's a whole lot to consider to talk about, I'll just give you. I know any listeners out there sort of know a lot of the background of the Joey Aguilar situation, but let me just give you the straightforward newsy part of this. As we record this, what is this, Tuesday afternoon? We are waiting on a temporary restraining order against NCAA rules that may or may not come. By the time you hear this, that may have come. But generally, the case is not going to change between now and when you hear this. Joey Aguilar, Tennessee quarterback, is seeking an additional year of eligibility through the courts, which would allow him to play for the Vols in the 2026 season. He's filed a lawsuit in state court. Now, specifically, it's the Knox County Chancery Court. So that sounds like it's like super local, but it is technically a state court. He's got a reasonable legal argument. Not sure if it's the right argument, if it's right or wrong, but it's reasonable from a legal standpoint. He started his career in junior college football. The NCAA allows players to play 4 seasons, and they count junior college seasons as part of that eligibility. Aguilar and many others argue that the NCAA should not count JUCO seasons because junior colleges are not NCAA members. So that's the general argument, but there are also some state laws that I think will probably help out Joey. There's antitrust law that also will probably help Joey's case because technically the NCAA is restricting his access to millions of dollars for what you could say are arbitrary rules, junior college rules, in terms of eligibility. The downside for the sport is that we could have several guys in their mid-20s playing college football because you go through junior college for a few years and then you start your clock in Division I. Most people don't want that unless it helps their team, in a singular season, and that's where you have a faction of Alabama fans that want Bediako eligible, that Tennessee fans that want Joey Aguilar eligible. I know those are completely two different situations. Bediako's already gone pro. Aguilar has not. But a lot of fans are weighing what's good for the sport versus what's good for my team. And of course, we all understand the real reason behind this is that these players can earn 6-figure or 7-figure salaries in NIL if they play another season. Joey Aguilar, according to the complaint filed in court, he would get something like $2 million for one season, which generally we thought that'd probably be about the number. He made a little over $1 million last year. He proved himself, led the SEC in passing. He would get about $2 million, and UT is holding a roster spot for him in case he does win in court. So that's the straight news of it. Let's talk about why UT fans should or shouldn't want Aguilar back for one season. And there's a few categories of this, John, but I just want to get your general take first. John, I think it's safe to say you're in the bring back Joey camp, at least in terms of how it would impact UT on the field. You had a column on this before Joey even filed his lawsuit. You had a column on KnoxNews.com. We've got a ton of coverage about this. But John, I'll just read the last couple of lines from your column. It says, I ranked Tennessee 6th in the SEC in my early prediction for next season, number 6, since it will face a much tougher SEC schedule than what it encountered the past 2 seasons. If it were breaking in a new quarterback against that schedule, I couldn't imagine it going better than 8-4. But you write, if Aguilar returns, the Vols should be a strong playoff contender. John, I think that means you think Joey Aguilar is worth a couple of wins compared to what Tennessee would have at quarterback otherwise. Is that the difference between Joey or no Joey? A couple of wins?
Well, I think it's a huge difference, Adam, because I value experience now more than ever. And the thing about Joey Aguilar, he's played so much football. I really think that matters. It doesn't even matter what level of college ball, even junior college ball. He's seen so many different defenses. He's learned different offenses. He's worked with different receivers. Just all those repetitions, I think, matter in terms of recognition in the course of a game at that position. I just think it's so vital. And we keep seeing examples of veteran transfer quarterbacks leading teams into the playoffs. The last two national championship games, all four quarterbacks, veteran transfer players. You kind of know what you're getting. You know guys that can have proved they can handle themselves at that level. So even though you might be breaking in a super talented guy, you can't trust him to perform at a higher level, in my opinion, because you just don't know. Forget arm strength or 40 time. You don't know how well he will process information in the heat of battle, how well he will see the field when the bullets are firing or coming, as they like to say. I just think that matters so much. And the other thing with Aguilar, and we talked about this off air, but Joey, this was his first year in the system. I think there's every reason. I don't think it's fantasy to believe he'll be better in this system next year. He'll have more rapport with the receivers. He knows what it takes to win in the SEC against high level competition. All those things, I set him, to me, he set up, he might pass for close to 4,000 yards next year. I think that's possible.
Yeah, I think there's a few factors here, and this is sort of the first category of people that are saying whether or not he should come back. I'm talking about the Tennessee fan base. The first category is Tennessee better in 2026 with Joey Aguilar versus another quarterback, which is what you're talking about there. Um, I think Tennessee is about 1.5 wins better with Joey compared to the alternative. Now, that's sort of a little bit of a sit on the fence number, but I think it's pretty accurate. If Tennessee is 1 win better with Joey, I don't know that it's worth it to bring him back. If you're 7-5 without him or 8-4 with him, and then you still don't know what you have in your young quarterbacks, I don't know that it's worth it. But if you go on the top end of that 1.5 games I'm talking about, if you're 2 games better with Joey compared to MacIntyre or Faizon or whatever, I think that's probably worth it. And I think Josh Heupel would agree with that. If Josh Heupel could take 9-3 with Joey over 7-5 with the others, he absolutely would take 9-3 because that would mean the program was still at a good level. If they're 10-2 with Joey or 8-4 without, you absolutely would take that because that's a playoff team. Um, so I think there's a few questions within the question about whether or not how much better or is Tennessee better with Joey than the other quarterbacks, and I'm talking only this season. Um, is Joey topped out? Like, is he? They were 8-4 in the regular season last year. Is he an 8-4 quarterback? I mean, the defense was a big factor. Tennessee was not good enough this past year. Now Joey did throw some costly interceptions in some big games. Some were his fault. Some were not his fault. Um, but what we saw of Joey this past season is that sort of his ceiling. Is he throw for a lot of yards, but he's just an 8-4 quarterback? Maybe he's just what some of Josh Heupel's Missouri quarterbacks were, or some of what Mississippi State's quarterbacks have been over the years. They just throw for a whole lot of yards and they beat bad teams. If that's what you think Joey Aguilar is, then it's not worth him bringing him back because that means you're probably going to be maybe 1 win better or about the same as a young quarterback, and then you're behind on bringing those young quarterbacks along. But if you think you can if you think Joey Aguilar is better next season than he would have been than he was last season, then you absolutely should want him back, because that means you're going to be better than this 8-4 team we just saw, which means you're in the playoff hunt. So I think I tend to think they are at least one, if not two games better with Joey Aguilar, which means I think if you can have him back, you absolutely should have him back. And John, shouldn't we really just judge these things in this era by what makes you better this year and this year alone?
Oh, yes. I mean, just forget. I think rebuilding was already an outdated term, but now it's either it's all about right now. It's not about 2 years down the road. Uh, Four SEC coaches got fired last year. I don't really think anybody thought going into last season that Brian Kelly at LSU, one of the highest paid coaches in the country, could get fired. And he didn't make it to November. So, yeah, it matters what you do on the field right now. And if you start thinking about down the road what you could become, that's that's really wayward thinking. It just won't pay off. The thing about Joey, I think you brought it up. He threw some key interceptions in a loss to Oklahoma, a very winnable game for Tennessee. He threw them against Georgia, a very winnable game. Tennessee lost in overtime by 3 points, but there were so many factors. Tennessee's defense should be better this year. I don't see how it couldn't be better. In its four regular season losses, I don't really count the bowl loss because it had lost key players. It was a different game. But in the four regular season losses, it gave up an average of 39.8 points. I mean, how many quarterbacks are going to overcome that? And another thing in those four losses, it averaged a little over 100 yards per game rushing. Joey Aguilar's passing was carrying these teams in losses. I just don't see. I have a hard time looking past those numbers. I see those numbers, and you give him a better defense and maybe a better running game. You've got several starters back in the O line. I think the O line could be better, and he's got more. I know he's losing Chris Brazell at wide receiver, but I really like what Ethan Davis at tight end could become, and he's got his other top two receivers coming back. I just think it's hard to argue that Tennessee's offense won't be better with him, and he won't be better next season. And I don't see how you're really guessing and hoping if you think a new quarterback can do that.
Yeah, I think you and I were both on Tony Basilio's show, friend of the program, and we were debating this a little bit. And he's in that camp where he thinks he loves Joey and all that, but he thinks Joey is sort of topped out. He's not a great runner, so he's not going to give you that. His passing was great this past year, but he is what he is. He's not going to be any better. I found a similar response to earlier today. I was on Cole Kubelik's show, also with Greg McElroy on there. And Greg McElroy, I had seen before, is not a huge Joey fan. It's not like he hates Joey Aguilar. He just thinks he is, I would say, just a pretty good but not great quarterback, and that Tennessee got the best out of him that they were going to get. And there's a reasonable take there because Joey Aguilar is not an NFL prospect. He's a college quarterback. You could easily say what you got out of him this year was what you're going to get because Tennessee beat bad teams and lost to good teams. Joey Aguilar was really good against bad teams. I'm saying teams with losing records, and was not great against good teams. They threw for a ton of yards against Georgia. I would say that would be the exception. Wasn't very good against Oklahoma. Wasn't great against Alabama, Vandy, etc. If you were ranked, Joey Aguilar usually didn't play great against you, but that was Tennessee's whole team. I just think there's something to be said to bringing back the guy in his second year, and there's more to it than just whether he's going to throw the ball great or understand the offense or all that. If you listen closely to some of the coding with Josh Heupel late in the year when he would make some criticisms about drive killing plays or mistakes or whatever, he would never call Joey by name, but there was some little slight criticisms about some of his RPO decisions, some of, what protection they were supposed to be in, whether or not he should have checked to a run, just a handful of pre-snap mistakes that Hendon Hooker made early on when he was a starting quarterback in 21, and he corrected, I would say, late in 21, certainly in 2022. And one of the big compliments that Josh Heupel used to give Hendon Hooker was he puts us in the right run play. He gets us into the right play. And you could see how Joey Aguilar would struggle with that a little bit, the more complicated defenses he saw, because the dude just dropped in late May and said, here's the playbook, learn it, and we'll see you in fall camp. And so you could see after a full year in the system how he would be better at that. And I don't know if it's Joey or the offensive line or running backs or whatever, but Tennessee was pretty good in the run, but this was their worst rushing season that they've had under Josh Heupel. They had been great at that, and they were just pretty good this past year. If they're a little better because Joey's been in the system, I think that's worth something. So I just tend to think there's more to Joey Aguilar if you bring him back for another year, especially if the defense is better, as a supporting cast and all that is better. Also, I think I don't think fans are going to like to hear this, but I think there's a little bit of a self-preservation I think decision here with Josh Heupel. I don't think Josh Heupel necessarily takes the safe route, but we know that Josh Heupel can't afford a bad year. He's not on the hot seat now, but if he had a bad year, viewing where the trajectory of the program has been the last year, he can't afford to have a bad year, or he could be on the hot seat after a bad year. Joey Aguilar is probably not going to give you a bad year. Now, maybe they're 8-4 again. Maybe they slumped to 7-5 because of that schedule. But they're not going to have a losing season if they have a healthy Joey Aguilar all year, unless the wheels come off somewhere else on the team. If you have one of those other quarterbacks, they may turn out great, but there's a better chance that you have oh crap, I'm on the hot seat now type season with those other quarterbacks. I say Tennessee fans don't want to hear that because that sounds like a just be good enough type decision. But if we think back to Butch Jones's last 2 years, things were rolling. You won 9 games, and then they just fell off a cliff at the end. And the fall off the cliff season is what tanks coaches' tenures. And if you tell me that Josh Heupel's going to have a fall off the cliff season this next year, I'll say, well, that means Joey Aguilar lost in court and it didn't work out with the next quarterback. I just don't think that happens with Aguilar. So I think Aguilar is just sort of a safe choice for them.
Adam, one other thing to look at it with this. 2 inexperienced quarterbacks, but highly rated. George MacIntyre, who just went through his freshman year. Faizon Brandon, one of the top 3 quarterbacks in his class, recruiting class. Let's go back and look at Texas this season. Arch Manning went into this season as a front runner for the Heisman Trophy. He played just enough the year before when Quinn Ewers was injured. He's got talent around him. He's got the Manning name. He can run. He's athletic. And he's a Manning, so you know he can throw. But Arch Manning wasn't great in the first half of last season. He wasn't even good a lot of the time. And Texas lost to a Florida team that won a whole 4 games. And it barely won against other weak teams. To your point, when you're playing an inexperienced quarterback, you run the risk of losing games. You might think, well, we shouldn't lose that game. Yeah, you might lose to Georgia, but you're not going to lose to a 4-8 Florida. You're not going to almost lose to Kentucky. But that's what happened to Texas. And that, to me, a lot of that is experience, because then fast forward to the second half of the year when Arch Manning sort of became what people thought Arch Manning would be, but they thought he would be that in the season opener against Ohio State, and he wasn't. I just think the risk factor is so high with an inexperienced quarterback.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point there about the sort of the who's good enough to beat bad teams. Because again, last year, what they had with Joey is they beat teams with losing records, they lost to teams with winning records. The flip side of that is if you have a quarterback in development, um, is there a better chance that you drop one you should otherwise win? I'm looking at this 2026 schedule. Furman, they beat if you and I are quarterback.
You, not me. I would lose to Furman.
I've got an MRI coming on my right arm, this right shoulder this week, so neither of us maybe. At Georgia Tech, week 2, if Joey Aguilar's playing that game, I feel good about Tennessee's chances. If it's a guy making a second start, which will probably be MacIntyre, I don't know. Kennesaw State, yeah. I mean, at Neyland in week 4, Texas. Are they beating Texas with Joey? Maybe without him. I don't feel good about that one. I mean, seasons change a lot, and George MacIntyre may light it up. But if you look at a game like Auburn at Neyland, Auburn at home, that seems to be a little closer to a pick 'em if you don't know what you're going to get out of your quarterback. At Arkansas, at South Carolina, Kentucky, at Vanderbilt. I mean, I just named 4 or 5 games there that you feel like if you have Joey Aguilar returning as your quarterback, you know what you're going to get. And I just don't know what you're going to get with the other quarterbacks. But John, you kind of lead us into our second category by bringing up MacIntyre and Faizon. First category was, is Tennessee better in 2026 with another quarterback? If you're a Tennessee fan that you're not so sure about that, you think Joey topped out, then you don't necessarily want him back. Second category is if you're a Tennessee fan and say, I just want to see George MacIntyre and Faizon Brandon. I don't care if they're better. I don't care if they're worse. I just want to see these guys. I've been waiting for them. I'm bored. I've seen Joey. That's great. Let's move on. I just want to see the young guys. And this is the mentality that a lot of NFL fans have in the draft, right? John, you remember not too many years ago where you would draft a quarterback in the first round and then he would sit there for like a year or two. I remember Steve McNair sat for like 2.5 years or something. You just see him standing on the sideline week after week, year after year. And then we got into the phase where if you're a first round pick, you better be starting in week 1. And that's sort of where college has gone. Like, hey, if you get a 5-star, he needs to be starting soon. I mean, people got really impatient the fact that Nico did not start as a true freshman. So then George MacIntyre comes in. He sits. He's the third string guy last year. So he threw 9 passes all year. The most people saw him was in the spring game. People are antsy. They want to see it. And if you think that Joey Aguilar is not going to get you to the playoff, then let's just be entertained and let's get some GMAC and let's get some Faizon. I mean, John, is that who are we to judge fans? But is that reasonable that you just want to see something different?
Well, if you subscribe to the theory that sports is entertainment,
Hmm.
I think it is, and you want a new face, a new star, sure. Fans couldn't wait to see Nico Iamaleava. Could not wait. He didn't play hardly at all as a freshman, sat behind Joe Milton, and everybody, myself included, was ready to see what Nico could do. And then we finally saw what Nico could do. It was pretty much about what Joe Milton did.
Hmm.
It was a different face, a different name that was hard to pronounce, and he had a few more stars, but he didn't become what we thought he would be. And he was one of the top quarterbacks in that recruiting class. So you just don't know what these guys are going to do. Yeah, Nico can run. He's got a great arm, but he wasn't fast to process information. He didn't see the field that well. And the offense struggle was saved by a great defense in 24. But again, you just don't know what you're going to get. And you can't look at how many stars a quarterback had in his recruiting rankings. And you can't look at his highlight video and project him as the next big thing in college football.
In retrospect, if Nico had been a high 3-star, low 4-star guy, it would have worked out so much better for him because remember when we saw the Citrus Bowl? We said, okay, this guy,
Yeah.
he's a really good runner. He's limited as a little bit as a passer, but he can run, and you just need to sort of simplify things for him to throw it. In that offseason, they said, oh, no. He's Dan Marino. We can do anything. Let's just open it up. And had he been like a low 4-star type recruit where you said, he's got some tools, but we're not sure yet. We're going to ease him into things. I think it would have been better for him because they would have had him run more, not had as much of a burden on him, and not thought that he was the second coming. They would have thought he's just a developmental young quarterback. All that being said, yeah, you don't know. You don't know what you're going to have. I can see the impatience. I think I see a reasonable impatience with some fans that are ready, especially to see George MacIntyre. Faizon just got here like a few weeks ago. He can wait. We'll see. But George MacIntyre, the scary thing if you are in the GMAC camp is that if Joey is playing in 2026, George MacIntyre is probably the backup. We know usually Josh Heupel's backup does not play much. Joe Milton played a lot, when Hendon Hooker, when they were beating people by 50. I just don't think this is going to be a team that's going to beat with that schedule. It's going to have a whole lot of 50-7 wins. So your backup's not going to play much, which means we could easily get to this next December and still not know if George MacIntyre should be the starter the following year. And if he doesn't feel that from just practice, or if he has not gotten those vibes from the coaches that we absolutely think you're a starter next year in 27, then there's a decent risk he's going to jump in the portal and say, I've waited for 2 years. They're still not sure. I'm still not sure. They seem to like Faizon. And George MacIntyre, if Joey's back in 26, George MacIntyre could easily go in the portal, having never started a game for Tennessee, and his first start as a college quarterback is somewhere else. And that's scary for fans that think that he may be, the next really good starting quarterback for Tennessee. They want to see him. And I think there's a little bit of a lack of trust there with the coaches. There's some doubts, I think, about Josh Heupel and Joey Halzle with a portion of the fan base that don't trust their assessment from practice only. These fans want to see it. I want to judge it for myself whether or not this guy has it or not. I think there's something to that. And the other thing, too, is so if George is the backup, but they're still not certain he's going to be the starter the next year, would they ever have Faizon leap over him and be the number 2? They would not, because they didn't do it with Jake Merklinger. They kept Jake Merklinger the number 2, even though they knew he was not going to be the starter. So then you've got Faizon sitting at number 3 and playing pretty much none. And you could be in the same predicament. So I do understand fans that they want to see it with their own eyes, and they don't want a good recruit coming to Tennessee, sitting on the sideline and leaving and having never shown them anything.
If I had to bet, I would bet that George MacIntyre transfers somewhere else. At some point, I just think the way it's set up, certain things have to happen, but I see these as very real possibilities. Joey Aguilar wins his court case and comes back for another year. Then you have Faizon Brandon coming in. He has a year to learn the system. He's he looks bigger and stronger than George MacIntyre does.
Yeah.
MacIntyre's he's very lithe. He's not well developed. Now maybe he will gain more weight, but I think right now that is a concern. I don't think he's as athletic as Brandon would be. So I just think that's a possibility. And we've seen it happen in the past. We don't have to look far back. It just happened with Jake Merklinger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was a backup, but we kind of figured he'd never be the starter. Tavian Jackson was here. And those guys, I think they were both 4-star recruits.
Yes.
And Tavian Jackson is since he transferred to Indiana, then he transferred to Central Florida, maybe. He's moved around. But my point is that it sometimes works out that way. You just and see, the way I look at it, I'm all in on the transfer portal quarterback. I'm all in on experienced quarterbacks. So
You have been from the beginning, though.
yes,
This
I
free
would.
agency.
Yes, I would get my quarterback out of the portal every year, and I wouldn't worry about the 4 and 5 stars, developing them, trying to keep them on the roster, and all that good stuff. I would just go out and get the best quarterback I could each year.
By the way, on that point, regardless of what fans think or what we think about how Tennessee is better, I think we can say with confidence that Josh Heupel thinks they need a veteran quarterback in the 26 season because they tried to get one. I mean, they tried to get Levitt, they tried to get Sorsby. Now you can say the fact that they were kind of lukewarm on Bo Prabula. You can say that they were only looking for a really good quarterback and not a good enough quarterback. But they did look pretty hard for some other option besides the young quarterbacks that they have, which tells you they think they need a guy like Joey Aguilar. So and we've seen in the court documents that he's promised a spot. They have NIL money, and so it's if he can get through the courts, then he's going to be back. The last reason that I had of why some Tennessee fans would not want Joey back is that it's bad for the sport. And I will have to say, I have quite a bit of respect for fans that believe this. I don't know what the percentages are. I tend to think if you add all these together, about a third of the fan base does not want Joey back. They're all grateful for what he did last season, but for all these various reasons, if you put these together, I think it's about a third of the fan base is like, nah, thanks, but no thanks. I think about half the fan base does want him back. And then I think that remaining percentage just is undecided, or they just say, I'll see you in September and whatever it is. But the last reason is that some fans are just like, this is good for us, for UT, but it's bad for the sport. You don't want 25-year-olds, playing all around the country. You don't want guys going to junior college for 2, 3, 4 years and then starting their NCAA clock. That it sets a bad precedent that you will regret past this season, and it may not be worth it anyway. It's you're not bringing back Fernando Mendoza. You're bringing back an 8-win quarterback. So, I mean, John, should we believe anybody in the Tennessee fan base that says, I don't think it's good for college football? Do you think that's really the reason for anybody?
I think a very small percentage.
Come on, John. You're not giving them any credit at all. Come on. This is a principled fan base, John.
I look at it the other way. See, I think it's good for college football.
What? Come on now.
I want to see Trinidad Chambliss play at Ole Miss till he's about 28. I love watching that guy play.
He could go do that for the Carolina Panthers, though, or whoever.
Yeah, but see, I prefer the college game.
Well, I do too.
So I want to keep the guys in college. I wish Fernando Mendoza was coming back for another season in Indiana. Love watching that guy play.
There is a counterpoint to what I just said, that there's not that many cases where this could affect guys, because the fear is that this would completely open up the floodgates, and so you would just have scores of guys that started in junior college that are now going to play till they're 25 years old if this goes through, or if the Diego Pavia case goes through. There's another There's some other cases that's challenging the junior college eligibility rules in West Virginia. I think there's one in Wisconsin. There's about 3 or 4 around the country, not just the Pavia one and the Joey Aguilar. But for this to really happen, you have to be a guy that started out in junior college and then good enough that Power 4 teams want you. You know what I'm saying? Like, Joey Aguilar was an unrecruited, nobody wanted him, 0-star junior college walk-on who ended up being the SEC's leading passer. Diego Pavia had a similar start. He ended up being a Heisman runner-up. Now, maybe those aren't exceptions. Maybe the fact that when there's something to be said for 22 and 23-year-olds just being better than 19-year-olds because they're older and they played a long time. But John, if these rules are changed and junior college doesn't count, do you think it would change the sport that much? Would we just have a flurry of players that start their NCAA clocks at like 20, 21 years old?
I don't think there would be a flurry. However, what I could see, Adam, is you look at the top programs, SEC type programs, and they probably won't get that many junior college quarterbacks. They'll take somebody from what we would call basketball parlance, mid-major. But where I could see it being a factor, if you're a group of 5 school, say Memphis or something, and Memphis or any school, group of 5, you have a quarterback has a really good year, and Texas comes calling, or Ohio State comes calling, or Tennessee comes calling, or Oregon, any one of those schools, and you lose them. So where do you go now? Well, then that creates an opportunity to me for those junior college guys, or in Ole Miss's case, in Trinidad Chambliss. Remember, he wasn't junior college, but he wasn't much better than that. He was Division II. So, yeah, we can guess, but we just don't. It's so hard to see where college football is going now.
Yeah.
In almost every area, be it transfer quarterbacks, junior college quarterbacks, NIL pay, the portal, the rules, court. You just don't know. It's all so uncertain.
So, I've gotten a number of questions about like where is this going, and I'm not a legal expert, neither one of us are. I've learned a lot of legal terms the past few years because every offseason Tennessee is in court for one reason or another. Usually in the NCAA on the other side. And again, I'll put this caveat out. By the time this publishes, and to the audience, you hear this, some news may have changed, some development in the Joey Aguilar case. That being said, they're trying to get a temporary restraining order. Now, whether they get it or don't get it doesn't necessarily say that Joey's going to win or lose. It's certainly better chance of victory if he gets the temporary restraining order, the TRO. Regardless, you do that step, win or get that or not get that, you move on to the injunction phase. When Tennessee was in court a couple of years ago with the Nico situation against the NCAA, they did not get the temporary restraining order, but then they got the preliminary injunction. So that can happen. But they're going for the restraining order first. Then you go to the preliminary injunction hearing. If he gets the injunction, it's pretty much a victory. That means this is going to go through and Joey's going to win and he's going to be presumably eligible to play in the 26th season. So you're not waiting for the restraining order necessarily. You're waiting for the injunction, which that could happen all this could happen real fast. I mean, it could, our next episode next week, we may know something. Certainly in 2 weeks, I think that we may know. Spring practice starts on March, I think 16th. They want an answer before then. Joey can enroll back in school March, I think it's 18th. Or maybe it's 16th. Anyway, it's around the same week. So they would like to get this done like within the next month. And I think that timeline is very realistic. John, I wanted to hit on one more thing. I didn't prep you for this, and I don't know if you've read it yet, but you and I have discussed it. I had a story on KnoxNews.com about Tennessee, sort of a review of the past signing class, the 2023 class. Late Tennessee signed almost the entire class. They'll add a couple more guys in the late signing period, which is Wednesday. But their class is pretty much done. Almost everybody's already enrolled on campus. But each year, I like to do this thing where I look back at a past recruiting class 3 years back, because I think 3 years later, you can judge hits or misses or sort of the makeup of the class. So I looked back at the 2023 Tennessee class to determine how, just sort of a where are they now. John, that was the Nico class. Nico was a 5-star in that one. There were a number of other guys notable: David Hobbs, Nathan Leacock, Caleb Herring, Arion Carter, Shadavian Bradley, Jordan Matthews, Cam Selden. That was sort of the top 8 guys. One 5-star and a lot of 4-stars. John, they signed 25 guys in that class, a standard number, 25. 3 years later, 7 of the 25 are still on this team. 7 of the 25 are still on the team 3 years later. And of the guys that left, so that's 18 guys, since then, in the past 3 years, the guys that left have transferred 29 times combined. 29 transfers. Some of them have transferred 3 times in 3 years. A lot of them have transferred twice in 3 years, and then a handful of others have transferred once. 29 times they've transferred. 7 guys are left of the 25. And I know we've discussed this on the pod before, but what's the point of signing 25 guys?
Pointless. Never should do it. Not anymore. I wouldn't sign more than 15 players out of high school.
Now, the counter to that is, so I mean, I think we're in agreement that if you were to sign, let's say, like you said, about 15, you would only sign the best ones, right? You only sign 5-stars and high 4-stars. Now, the counter argument to that is some of those guys don't pan out. Nico left. He panned out somewhat, but he if you just put these in order, from best rating to lowest rating, Nico left. David Hobbs is still here. Nathan Leacock gone. Caleb Herring was here a while, but he's gone. Arion Carter is still here. Shadavian Bradley is gone. Jordan Matthews is gone. Cam Selden is gone. Ethan Davis is here. Ricky Gibson is gone. So I don't know. That's 3 out of 10 are still here. So if you sign the top 15, the percentages are going to be the same, I would think. If you sign 25, you have 7 left 3 years later. If you sign 15, what do you have, 3 left 3 years later? Does that matter? I mean, you just fill the holes with transfers every single year?
Sure.
That's the easy. That's
yeah.
It.
I mean, because here's the thing: you're talking about you try to sign 4 and 5-stars, so you don't go after a 3-star. But that 3-star, 2 years later, has become an all-conference player at a Power 4 league. Then you go back to him and say, "Okay, we got money for you now. You showed us, and we're getting ready to show you that you get them later."
Which is a funny dynamic, because we started this pod off talking about Joey Aguilar in junior colleges. And for decades, that's what you did with junior colleges, right? I remember when I was first in the business 25 years ago, you would hear about coaches. We placed him at Hutchinson Community College, right? We placed him there, which meant we're going to put him there. He's going to play for a couple years. And we've told him we're going to come get him after 2 years and bring him here. Now, if he's not good, we're going to not take his calls and pretend like we don't know who he is.
Yeah.
Even if he gets arrested, if he's good, we'll take him. If he's arrested and it's bad, we'll tell him, well, we can't take you because you got arrested. But yeah, that's how they used to say it. We would place you. So what you're talking about is, hey, we're going to place you at App State. We're going to place you at New Mexico State. We're going to place you at Western Kentucky. And then, we believe in you, but we just want to see it. And so in a year or two, once you're all Sunbelt, we'll come get you. That's sort of now the problem with that is, from what I understand, is it costs more to pay transfers than it is to retain players. You're going to pay more to go get a guy than you are going to just to keep a guy.
Yeah, but you know the guy you're getting. You obviously think he's better than what you have. So to me, it's money well spent.
Yeah, I mean, I did a thing a few weeks ago where I looked at the hit rate with Josh Heupel's transfers, and it's a low number of transfers. It's like 30 something over his tenure, but he hits on about 2/3, 3/4 of them that they come in and they contribute at least to the extent that you needed them to. So they have a high hit rate. They just don't bring in a lot of guys. So what you're saying is just bring in more guys.
Sure.
You know, and maybe here's the counter to my counter is that it does cost less to retain guys. I will say that Tennessee has turned into a program where a lot of guys look for a raise every single off season. So how much are you spending to retain guys, and the price just keeps going up?
We'll see. To me, Adam, that's where, to me, loyalty has left the building on both sides. You can't get hung up on loyalty. You've got to build your roster to the highest level you can. And so you just judge that player. You put a monetary value on that player. And if he wants more, you say, okay, would we rather spend more on him, or would we rather go get a guy at Oklahoma State or Maryland or wherever that we believe, from what we've seen and experienced, and we've looked at his numbers, he would be better. So that's what you do. I think, as you can tell, I'm totally in on the portal now. I
Yeah.
just think that's how you win a championship, is through the portal.
Well, and one element that's in the NFL that we don't get in college, and we probably will never get it because these numbers will probably never be publicly viewed, is that we don't know precisely what the pay is of each of these guys. So
Right.
if we did, then, oh boy, we could say every year we could have a dollar amount of guys that stood on the sideline. You know, they had $7 million sitting on the sideline for
Yeah,
the whole
that was
year.
like, hey, they've got a $7 million bench. Good for
That's
them.
right. That's right. Yeah, because that number is pretty big. I mean, if you just put together the two
Sure.
quarterbacks Tennessee had last year and 3 or 4 offensive linemen that were like high 4-star guys, you know, a receiver here and there, you have some guys that you know were making 6 figures, and you add all those together, it's like, well, that's millions of dollars by guys that had like combined 14 snaps all year. And so you're paying guys to stand on the sideline and develop. And so if they don't pan out, the difference is, what I'm saying is, in the NFL, you have smaller rosters. You have a 53-man roster. And if you don't cut it, they cut you. If there's a dollar figure beside you, and I don't mean at the end of the season, I
No,
mean like
you're gone.
week 2, we
Yeah.
paid you this much money, and we can look and see and say that guy ain't worth it. Then they just cut him. Of course, they have, you know, they have a waiver wire and all that. But
Well,
that
what
I would love to know that number of the wasted money on the sideline.
I could see a rankings. You know, you rank everything now.
Yeah.
People like to rewrite. Okay, here are the top 25 most overrated players in America.
Oh, don't think I haven't thought of this, of
Yeah,
just a bar
yeah,
graph of
yeah. Minutes played, dollars earned, and
yeah.
you could do it not just with individuals, but you could have You could have team rankings,
Yeah, because
teams that wasted the most money.
I get the Pro Football Focus. I'm a subscriber to that, where you can see number of snaps, and I would love to have guys 100 snaps, under 100 snaps. How many? What's the dollar amount you have on players under 100 snaps? It's I dream of that. I don't think we'll ever be able to know that number. But Joey Aguilar does know his number, or approximate number, which is probably about $2 million. If he can get through the court system, I think those legal fees will be more than worth it if he can get through. But I think he, in the Diego Pavia case, I think he had about a 10 or 20% chance of victory. I think it may be 50% or better in this case. I think it's better than not that he wins out. But the next time we're on an episode, I would suspect that I could move that percentage up or down because I think we'll have some developments here in the next week. And we'll be covering all those developments. Follow our coverage of the Vols and the Joey Aguilar situation at KnoxNews.com. Share this podcast with your fellow UT fans. We'd love for you to subscribe as well, just to make sure you never miss us. And thanks for listening to this episode of The Volunteer State.